Daniel Sports Central. We go for our 2022 college football predictions for the Pittsburgh Panthers. The ACC champion of the 2021 season, as this team went 11-3 overall. And all around, this is the best team, the most dominant team in the ACC last season, but how this team being 2022. That's what we go over here today. We'll be analyzing this team and predict their schedule game by game in this video, starting out with your team trends. Pitt was 11-3 last season. They were 6-1 in their first 7 games, 5-2 in their last 7. And I mean, this team was expected to be a 6 to 8 win team going into last season. I mean, their expectations were not very high going into 2021. So for this team to win an ACC title and get 11 wins last season, make it to the New Year's Six bowl game, I mean, yeah, it was an outstanding season for Pitt. Definitely one of the better ones that we've seen in quite a while out of this team. And you kind of knew out of the gate. I mean, they went to Knoxville. They played Tennessee in week 2 and beat them 41-34. I mean, that was a very impressive win. They're beating Tennessee, an SEC opponent that was expected to be pretty good last season, and Tennessee ended up getting 7 wins last year, so they ended up being a decent football team. So that certainly was a huge win there. They also beat Virginia Tech 20-7. That was a really good road win there as well. They beat Clemson, which was a huge win, 27-17. Lost to Miami by 4 the next week, though, so that was obviously one of the tougher losses of the season there, losing that game by 4. They beat Wake Forest in the ACC title game, took care of the Demon Deacons in that game, 45-21. And honestly, the ACC last season was just a very surprising conference. I mean, it was looking like it was going to be Clemson, North Carolina, and Miami as the top 3 teams going into 2021. And turns out it was Pitt, NC State, and Clemson and Wake Forest as your top 4. Clemson kind of snuck in, and they ended up having actually a pretty good season towards the end. But Clemson in the beginning just did not look like a very good football team. And I mean, the Tigers really did improve over the course of the season. So I do think Clemson, considering they're returning some good talent going into next season, I wouldn't be surprised to see Clemson once again take the top of the ACC. But I mean, yeah, for Pitt, it was a great season, getting up to 11 wins, and played Michigan State in their bowl game. Kenny Pickett didn't play, so I think that was a huge part. I mean, it was going to be a challenge for Pitt to win that game without Kenny Pickett, who took off to the NFL draft, and they lost to Michigan State there 21-31. But looking forward to 2022. Now, your roster preview going to next season, Kenny Pickett is gone, which is obviously going to be a huge change. I mean, last season was his best year in college by far. I mean, his stats were outstanding last season: 4,300 yards, 42 touchdowns, 7 picks, and a 67% completion rate. So yeah, Kenny Pickett, he saved the best for last. I mean, that's for sure. He played, I mean, he's been playing since 2017 for Pitt, and 2021 was obviously his 5th and final year playing for this team. He was a primary starting quarterback starting in 2018, playing 14 games in 2018, and I mean, he was pretty stagnant. I mean, he really didn't improve too much from 2018 to 2020, but in 2021, I mean, that's a major outlier. I mean, he threw 12 to 13 touchdowns in his first 3 full-time starting seasons with Pitt, and in 2021 he threw 42 against 7 interceptions. So I mean, Kenny Pickett had a really fantastic year, and I mean that's also in part to his teammates. And I mean, this team was very solid last season. Backfield actually looks pretty good going to next season. You got your top 1 coming back. You actually got your top 3 running backs coming back for next season, which is going to be huge. And you got Kedon Slovis coming in from USC, which Kedon Slovis, he's a quarterback who is a bit inconsistent, and he's kind of, I mean, his ceiling is certainly high, and he's shown tremendous potential in the past. I mean, 2019 he played with USC for 3 seasons before deciding to transfer, and I mean, 2019 was his best season. His first season was his best easily. I mean, if you look back to 2019, he put up 3,500 yards, 30 touchdowns, 9 picks. And if you look at his 2021 stats versus his 2019, he threw 2,100 yards, 11 touchdowns, 8 picks, and a 65% completion rate. So while Kenny Pickett progressively got better over the course of his career, it kind of looks like Kedon Slovis is doing the opposite. He's going in the wrong direction, but I think this is going to be a good thing for him to get a new start at a new school here with Pitt, and it's going to be different for him. I mean, he's in the ACC now, but at the same time, I think he's set up for some success here going into next season. Although Jordan Addison is transferred away, so the top receiver for this team is transferred to USC. which, I mean, Jordan Addison, he was outstanding last year. He put up over 1,600 yards, 18 touchdowns, and he's going to be a major threat with USC next season. And, I mean, USC is really building, I think, something great over there right now. So, I mean, you got, of course, Caleb Williams going over there from Oklahoma, Lincoln Riley going in. I mean, Travis Dye, Oregon transfer running back, and Jordan Addison now. I mean, USC is set up to have a really good next few years here. So, we'll see how that happens. But you do have Jared Wayne coming back, the second receiver for this team last season. But you do lose your third, Taysir Mack. So you lose two of your top three, but the backfield once again looks really good. Vincent Davis, Rodney Hammond Jr., Abanik Kanda as well. So your top three running backs coming back. And once again, the receiving core I'm not too concerned about. You lose two on the offensive line, two linebackers, one in the secondary. And I mean, it brings up the question, is this team once again going to be a major ACC contender in 2022? I mean, Kenny Pickett, I think, had a huge influence on the success of this team last season. He really just had an outstanding season. And losing him, I mean, and replacing with Kedon Slovis, a quarterback who's a bit inconsistent. And definitely, I mean, we don't know if he's going to be incredibly good or not. If Slovis goes out and puts up a really good season, or even a season like he did in 2019 with USC, I think this team is built to get up to 10 wins once again next season. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind. But once again, we just don't really know about how he's going to be. Once again, Kedon Slovis has kind of digressed over the course of his career, kind of going in the wrong direction. But once again, I mean, getting a new start for him, having a new start with a new football team, with a team that's got some really good talent still coming back, I think he's definitely set up for some success. But will this team be a major ACC contender? I think they'll be in the background. I don't know if they're going to win. I don't think this team is going to win another ACC title next season. I think Kenny Pickett and not having him around is going to have too big of an impact. But I could see this team definitely pulling off a couple of big upsets. I think Clemson is really my favorite to win the ACC next year, kind of followed by NC State and even Wake Forest potentially. Both NC State and Wake Forest are really looking good going into next season. But for Pitt, I can see Pitt definitely up there too, but I don't know if they'll quite win an ACC title. But I mean, this will still be a good football team next year. There's no doubt. But transfer portal and recruiting now going into next season. Wendell Davis, linebacker, going to Northwestern. Leslie Smith, linebackers in the transfer portal. You bring in a couple of players. You got Jared Means, a receiver coming in from Louisiana Tech. Dylan DeVenny, tight end coming in from Georgia Tech. Davis Baville, quarterback, he's off to Oklahoma, which he really hasn't had a big impact on this team. So, I mean, it also makes sense with the addition of Kedon Slovis. But he's off to Oklahoma. You lose Cam Bright off to Washington, linebacker. And then Shockey Jaquez Lewis, receiver, he's off to Akron, which he's had an impact on this team in the past. Not really in 2021, but he is still a key receiver who's off to Akron. And then Shane Simon, linebacker, is coming in from Notre Dame. So recruiting-wise, 76th in the nation, 14th dead last in the ACC. So definitely the recruiting could be better. You got 1 4-star coming in, 10 3-stars. So, I mean, really, you had a couple players from the transfer portal. Your recruiting is somewhat poor, so that is kind of a downside for this team. But looking at your schedule now going into next season, you got West Virginia on a Thursday night to start off this season. So, I mean, you're in the spotlight in week 1 there. You got a game on a Thursday night against West Virginia at home, which West Virginia, I think, is kind of a dark horse team in the Big 12. Potentially, they could be in the 7-9 win range. Then you got Tennessee. You got them at home on the 10th. You got Western Michigan on the road, and then Rhode Island at home to finish out your September. So your first 3 games for that matter, are definitely not pushover games. All 3 of them teams are not going to be easy. Not easy games there. So, I mean, you definitely you want to start out the season strong. In October, you got Georgia Tech at home, Virginia Tech at home, a bye week, then off to Louisville and North Carolina. And then in November, you got Syracuse at home, Virginia on the road, Duke at home, and then Miami on the road to finish out the season. So looking at September here, West Virginia, that's definitely a very interesting matchup. West Virginia next season, I mean, they're a team with a couple of additions from the transfer portal. They could be a pretty decent team next season. I don't think they're going to be a Big 12 champion, but that'll be a challenging game there, I do think. It'll be a close one, but Panthers do get the win there in the end. Tennessee, you're going to lose to them. I think Tennessee next season, potentially a dark horse in the SEC. I could see them in the 8-10 win range. Then you got Western Michigan on the road. I'm going to say Western Michigan is a close one, but you do beat them. I'm pretty confident of that. And then Rhode Island, you beat them by a couple of touchdowns. So you're 3-1 heading into October. You got Georgia Tech, easy win. Virginia Tech at home. That'll be definitely an interesting matchup. I do think you beat Virginia Tech, even though I could see the Hokies as a 6-8 win team next season potentially. Then you got Louisville on the road, North Carolina on the road. I do think both games are winnable for Pitt, but you are going to lose both. I think North Carolina, you do lose that one for sure. Louisville, I think there's a chance you do plot a win there, but I'm going to still predict the Cardinals to win that one. So you're 5-3 heading into November. You got Syracuse at home, easy win. You're going to beat Virginia on the road, but Virginia next season, that's a team that I'm actually I like them quite a bit to potentially go on to win that Coastal Division. I mean, the Coastal Division is incredibly competitive next season. I think Virginia, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, I mean, Miami, and of course Pitt, I think all 5 of these teams are very much capable of winning the division. And I'm going to say I think Virginia, honestly, very well might just be my favorite to win the Coastal. I mean, they're looking pretty good going to next season. I like how they're looking. So they're going to be a tough team, but I do think Pitt ends up beating them. So you'll be one of the few teams to beat Virginia next season, I think. And then Duke, easy win, and then Miami on the road. You lose to them to finish out the season, but in the end, 8-4 is going to be a record, which I think is pretty good. I think 8-4 is definitely a good record for this team next season, considering they're going to be a bit younger in some areas. But that's it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below on Pitt, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.